All right, we are good to go. All right, well, thanks everyone for taking some time out of your day here. Crazy world we live in, everything seems to be changing from day to day. So thanks for joining us as we put on our webinar on moving from your conference room to maybe your kitchen table or maybe your home office, or maybe as Jen, my partner here at Joint Pivot, she has her laundry room. Your nice space, Jen. Welcome today. Wonderful. Wonderful. You guys will find out why that's so important as we move through our meeting here today. So obviously things continue to stay a very, very fluid situation. So our hope for today is to be able to give back to you guys with everything that we wish people would have told us about facilitating meetings remotely. So I personally have run remote meetings now for about the last 20 years. And ironically gave a presentation just about 10 years ago on how to facilitate continuous improvement events over the phone, simply because we knew when we ran out of our travel budget at that company that we were done for that year, and I was typically the one who was running out of it by like August. So we had to get a little bit creative in how we would run our continuous improvement events. So there's a lot of tips we've learned along the way, a lot of toes that we've stubbed, a lot of embarrassing stories that you guys will hear today. So hopefully a lot of what you're going to learn is going to help you cheat that curve. And just so you guys know, everybody who is on the call and signed up for it, you are going to get a copy of the presentation here today as a PDF. And then you will also get a 2-page handout that has all of our tips on it for you. So you don't have to worry about writing those down as we speak today. Those are all coming to you, and you can feel free to share those with whoever you'd like, so that we can just help make this a little bit easier for everybody who is now switching to having to work remotely and run some of these meetings over the phone, because we know that a lot of these meetings can't stop. So welcome. All right. And welcome, Jen. Can you say hi to everyone, Jen?
Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's surviving.
Awesome. It's wonderful. Wonderful. I did drive past Costco this morning and it looked pretty empty. So, however, I was on the phone earlier today. There are more supplies coming. So just know, you don't need to hoard toilet paper. So. All right, so a little bit about Joint Pivot, just so you guys know where we're coming from. So you're not just sitting here on a conference call with us, maybe that we don't know anything. This is actually what we do. So we do a lot of work with Lean Six Sigma, change management, project management, leadership development and coaching, problem solving and process improvement, and strategic planning. And a lot of our clients are not actually in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where we are based. They are based all over the country. So the majority of our time is actually running these exact types of meetings with employees across the world. We've done a couple calls with Canada, a couple calls across Europe. So we've got a little bit of experience in this, and we'd love to be able to share that with you and then also hear your tips as well. So we do partner with companies and businesses to try and figure out where their issues are, how we can help them solve it. They need lean or continuous improvement training, strategic planning. We like to help you with that. So whether it's us teaching your people how to do it on their own, or you want us to come in and do the training for you, that's all stuff that we can do. So it's a little bit about us and what we plan to cover. So we do a lot of strategic planning sessions, we do a lot of teaching, and we do a lot of speaking across the board. So there's about, I want to say, it's hard for me to say this, Jen, we have about 40 years of experience doing this across the two of us. I like to think that maybe this means we started when we were 10, but no, we really are that old. And we've been doing this for a little while.
Sure.
Exactly. Very, very mature, exactly. Yes. I love it.
Adulting.
All right. We are adulting, exactly. All right, so this was something hilarious that I happened to see, and I think there's actually a couple people who are already on the call who may not actually know this person. This person posted this on their Facebook page yesterday, and one of my good friends, she has a husband who typically works in the office. She's a stay-at-home mom, and she works outside of the house just a little bit, but her husband is now transitioned to working from home. And she posted this yesterday, and I found it absolutely hilarious, and I asked her right away if I could share it. Her poor husband is in that little car parked in the neighbor's driveway, jumping on a conference call, because as she said, there was no safe spot in their house. She's got 2 kids and I think 4 or 5 dogs now. So you can imagine it might be a little bit loud in there, probably not the best environment for a conference call. So this is just the reality that we are faced with today that we now have to deal with. So a lot of stuff that is going to be able to help us out with that situation. And obviously we all just need to pack our patience a little bit because we're all dealing with these types of situations on our own. So we're gonna start off with a quick poll here. And I'm gonna start this, you can click on your screen here. I'm launching polling. I wanna know what your biggest fear is while facilitating these types of virtual calls. So what are you most worried about that you are jumping into these? So is it kids screaming? I personally don't have kids, so I usually don't have to worry about that one. Jen's got one of those that she's dealing with. Is it dogs barking? I have a dog, I have 3 dogs, so I do worry about that one quite a bit. If it's people not being engaged, if you feel like you're looking bad on camera, if you didn't mean to share something or sharing something on your screen that you didn't mean to share, your spouse forgetting that you're actually on the call. Fun one on that one. I actually was on a call just about 8 or 9 years ago now where this lady was sitting at her kitchen table and her husband had forgot that she was actually on a video call, and he walked into the screenshot basically nude from the waist up, just completely forgot that she was on a video call. Or is it lack of participation? You're worried about people actually participating on the call. People will think it's a poor use of time. Maybe you might not be meeting your deliverables. You might think that your meetings might not be as successful as you thought they could be if you had them in person. Or if you're like me, sometimes I'm afraid of losing connectivity because Comcast is not always the best here for us to be able to figure out or to keep that connectivity up and going. So go ahead and feel free to vote here. And I'd love to hear, love to hear what your biggest concerns are when it comes to voting and what your biggest fear is on a virtual call.
I don't see it, Julie.
You don't see it. Is anybody else not seeing voting?
I can't vote.
And it's not letting me click. Well, that is the weirdest thing ever.
We tested this yesterday, so we know it works.
We did. We did. All these people who can. Okay, but you're telling me in chat, so that's awesome. I appreciate that. So poor use of people's time. Definitely asking issues with video calls. Live examples of issues with video calls. Yes, we are currently experiencing that one right now.
Yeah.
People not being engaged, issues with the dogs barking, lack of participation. Gotcha. Okay, so it looks like the biggest one we're seeing so far, and I appreciate you guys typing this into chat. I know Zoom earlier today was having issues with people calling in, so maybe they might be having issues with their polls right now. So let me end polling here. So thank you guys. So it looks like I've been keeping a little score here as I'm going. Not meeting people, not meeting deliverables, people not being engaged, and lack of meeting deliverables. So that's awesome. Lack of participation. So thank you guys for that. That's really cool. It's good for us to know so we can focus on those areas more specifically in our webinar today. So thank you guys for that. Wonderful. All right. So as we go through this, you're going to see a lot of the stuff that we're going to be recommending here is in the preparation. So the number changes depending on who you talk to, but I like to stick with the 80-20 rule. You need to spend about 80% of your time planning and prepping for the meeting to go right. And then 20% of the time is actually the doing piece of it. So a lot of what we have to do is to make sure that you guys are prepped and ready to go before the meeting even starts. Because we know that the more prepared that you guys are and a more prepared person, the better experience it creates for others. And that was a lesson that I learned just about a year or two ago. I couldn't figure out why I was getting so frustrated in some of the meetings. And usually it was because I was not the one who planned it. But I was like, I still don't understand why this just doesn't feel good. And it was because it wasn't a great experience for me. The person who was putting it on didn't necessarily plan it out that well. And all of a sudden it just hit me. Yes, I put a lot of time into planning. Jen puts a lot of time into planning. The people I work with and that I really respect put a ton of time into planning so that you can just show up and the meeting just runs smooth. And it's like nothing ever happened, nothing bad ever happened, and everything just started to go right. So that's what we want to be able to make sure that we're preparing you for. So we'll jump right in here into our plan. So before the call, there's a couple of things that we want you to think about before the invite even goes out. So before you have the opportunity to set up that invite, make sure, one, that you've got a really good, clear agenda for people to be able to follow. And that agenda has to have your deliverables in it, it's got to have your purpose, and it's got to be able to have those decisions that you need to be able to be making. Now, you're saying a lot of this stuff doesn't change whether you're in person or you're on a virtual facilitated meeting. And that's absolutely true. A lot of this stuff will apply to making you better at in-person meetings when we actually get to be able to be in person with one another again. So really think through, especially now, what decisions need to be made in that half-hour call or that hour-long call that you're doing. That would be absolutely fantastic if you can go through and highlight that right at the very top of the email or right at the top of the invite and say, hey, today during this call, we need to make a decision on X. Then people come in with that frame of mind, knowing that this is exactly what it is that we need to attack on the call. The second one here is making sure that you're sending that agenda out before the meeting. It does the participants absolutely no good if you have that agenda and you haven't shared it. And I've been to a few of those where we get to a meeting, I don't know exactly what it was, the invite was completely blank, and somebody shows up and there's agendas around the room. And I'm like, well, it really would have been good for me to have that ahead of time so I could have thought through this before I came in. So make sure if you can, send out that agenda. The third one is make sure you've got the right people on the call. And it's okay to add people just as needed. So especially in times like right now, it is really difficult to facilitate an online call that is more than about 5 to 7 people. I usually say, 8 to 12 is a good number in person, but 5 to 7 is probably better when you're running these types of virtual meetings, because then you have people kind of talking over each other. It's a little bit harder to kind of control and see the body movements and read people's faces and allow people that opportunity to kind of talk over each other when you're on that virtual meeting. So if you can, start off with that core group, and then as you need to, have people dial into the meeting. And it's okay to say, hey, the meeting's actually starting at 9 o'clock. We'll give you a call when we're ready for you to join, or shoot you a text when we're ready for you to join. And then when you're done with your part, or we're done talking about that specific piece of it, you'll let those people off the call. And it's totally fine to have them drop at that point. You don't have to have everybody on during the same time. It can be a little awkward in person when you're in meetings to say, hey, all right, well, you can leave the room now. That never feels good. It's obviously a little bit easier to do when you're on the phone like this. And a great way to do that is to say, hey, we want to respect your time. So if you have other things that you need to do right now, feel free to drop off the call. And it's always a good way to frame it that way. That way you're giving them the opportunity to make that choice, and you're giving them the opportunity to exit. And majority of the time, people actually really appreciate that and will drop off the call during that time. So really think about that one. And then this is a good one for these virtual calls, is if there is pre-work that can be done that you can do before you come into the meeting, and you can get that back and have it summarized so you can bring that to the call and people have a chance to review it beforehand, absolutely do that. So an example of what I'm talking about here is, let's say you're running a call where you're talking about how a program went or how a campaign went, and you want to hear what people have to say about it. So it's not as fun anymore when you're all in the same room and you can actually talk about that and start writing stuff up on the board. What works really well in this situation is if you send that question out a day or two ahead of time and you ask people for that feedback and you have them send it to you, and then you as the facilitator can take that information and put that into a Word document or into a PowerPoint or Excel or some way that you can pull that up and share it on the screen. And you can share everybody's views ahead of time so that people can go through and see it, and then it's going to be up on the screen for everybody to review. Because we have to be really careful for those people on virtual meetings now who need to not only hear it, but they also need to see it. So it's still important to be able to replicate that whiteboard. And the fun part about these calls is a lot of the programs, whether you're using Zoom or whether you're using GoToMeeting, has these fun options where you get to annotate on the screen. So I can start drawing on my screen here. This was fun. I discovered this one where I can just put lovely little hearts over everything. you can essentially use your screen as a whiteboard, which is fantastic. When you've got a large group like this and you need to be able to have that kind of free-form discussion, you can mark things up right on the screen. It gives you the options to go through and save that. I think every major meeting sharing service right now has that option. I know GoToMeetings has this option. Some of them you had to pay for it. They're actually offering that for free now. So it's been pretty great that companies are doing that. So utilize those types of features. All right, we'll add one more heart in there for fun. All right, so then the next piece after the call here, I'm going to stop on my stamp and go to my next slide, which it's now not letting me, of course. So we're going to clear that, save it, and be able to move forward. Or not here. Fun. There we go. Oh, good. It saved it out there for me. Let me clear all my drawings here. All right. So the other thing before the call, before you send out that invite, is placing one-tap mobile-friendly call-in information right in the location block of your Outlook invite or your Gmail invite, whatever system it is that you're using. So for those of you who are not familiar with that, that is essentially putting in the numbers of the phone or the phone number that you're dialing into. So in this example, it was 312-626-6799. And then those little commas are essentially a pause. So it's going to dial the number for you. It's going to take a couple second pause, and then it enters the meeting dial-in information or the ID of the meeting in for you along with that pound. So with Zoom, for example, it gives you those options to be able to copy and paste that mobile-friendly number right into the subject line or right into the location line. If you're doing it by hand, you just put the number in, put a couple commas in, and then you'll put the meeting ID and then a pound. So I highly recommend testing that one out ahead of time with a friend if you can, just to make sure that it works, or you can test it out yourself as well. But that is really, really great for people who need to just like one touch and dial in. Sometimes it can be difficult to go down into the meeting invite and find all that information. This will just help you. And then in a world when we actually do get to go back out into the yonder outside here, it helps, especially if you've got people who are trying to dial in from a car. If they need to do one-tap mobile, they can just tap on that. It'll dial the call for them and dial them right into the meeting. Hopefully they're pulled over when they do it, fingers crossed. But that information is there for them, so it makes it easier for them to dial in. The second one on this page is, if you can, share those documents or links to the documents to whatever you're covering in the meeting notice. So as you guys have already started to see, sometimes we can have issues with technology as we're going through these different types of meetings. So people might not be able to share their screen, they might not be able to see your screen, or they may only be able to dial in via phone. So in those cases, you want to make sure that you're sending a copy of the documents you might be pulling up on your screen to the teams ahead of time if it's something particular that they want to look at. So if you can put them into a document folder into the invite, or if you can put them out, let's say on SharePoint somewhere to say, hey, all of the documents we're covering today are in this specific location, then people know exactly where they are. This can actually also really help in situations where you don't know what kind of equipment people have in their home offices now. So they might have a monitor from 10 years ago that is entirely pixelated, and what you're showing on your screen is in a much higher resolution and they can't exactly see it. Or you might switch to the next slide too quickly for them to digest the information that was there. That allows people to follow along with you online, but then also have the choice to go in and dig into something a little bit deeper when they need to. All right, and we do have a question. Do we know if the feature is available in Skype? Is that the annotate feature? I believe it is, if that's what you're talking about, being able to write on the screen. If you are using Skype meetings, you should be able to have that annotate as well when you are sharing your screen. And the call feature. Yes, the call feature should be able to have that as well. So there should be a dial-in that somebody would dial in from their phone. That call-in feature should be available to you as well. So as long as you have the 10-digit number that people would be dialing into, and you've got a meeting ID number, then you absolutely will have that. And you typically should have that in your Skype meetings, as long as it's not like an instant meetup. So that should be there for you. If you have trouble with that, when we shoot out the note after this email with the information, shoot me a message back if you're unable to find it, and I'll dig that down for you, because we've got a lot of resources on how to be able to use all those different types of technology, because all of our clients, ironically enough, use a different one. So we've had to adjust to learning 3 or 4 multiple different ones now. So I've got instructions on that for you if you can't find it. You got it. Glad that can help you out, Tia. Thank you. All right, we'll jump to the next one here. So another piece before the call is, 1, plan for people who do not understand technology. Be really patient with them. So if somebody has a difficult time with technology and they might have a difficult time setting this up, give them a call before the meeting, maybe set up some time with them to do a practice session to make sure that they feel comfortable with it. And this doesn't even need to be in your meeting in general, something that you're running today or this week. Think about just people in general right now. If you've got someone who you think might be struggling working from home and working with all of this technology, it would be a really, really kind thing for you right now just to reach out with them, just to make sure that they're okay with this technology and that they're getting it and that they're not struggling. Because we've all had our hiccups and run-ins as we're trying to do this stuff. So the more proactive help you can give to others to make them feel comfortable with it is the better option to go down. All right. The next one is, oh yes, Jen.
Oh, I did a FaceTime call with my mom to set up Zoom on her computer today. So
fantastic.
She can talk to grandchildren all she wants now.
There you go. That's perfect. That's a great way to do it. That's a fantastic way. I was going to say, luckily or unluckily, my in-laws don't have Apple products. So I can't FaceTime with them, but maybe we'll have to set up a Zoom with them so they can see our faces and see their grand dogs in those cases.
Yes.
Fantastic. Good point, Jen. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So then, funny here, testing the platform before the meeting to ensure you have the right software downloaded. So some of you probably had to install some sort of feature this morning or this afternoon when you were starting to enter our Zoom. So in some cases, it'll allow you to just join via a web app. Some cases you have to download the software. I know GoToMeeting has a launcher as well that you have to log into and set up. So think about that ahead of time before you're jumping in. So if there's ways that you can test the meeting platform, and then absolutely practice. And I promise Jen and I did practice our polling feature yesterday, which is hilarious for us to be able to go through. So practicing all of those different controls, especially practicing sharing your screen back and forth. So the fun part about all of these is you can jump on a call like this and people can share their screens. You can jump back and forth to one another. So it doesn't really matter who is the presenter or the initiator of the meeting. The majority of these softwares now have the ability that you can make somebody else a presenter, or you can have people join the meeting being able to present and share that way. Or there is even the option of being able to have people control your screen. So I know I actually do this. It's a good day for parents. I do this with my parents. So I have them log into Zoom every time my mom screams up something on her computer and she tries to figure out what she did to it. I zoom onto her computer and then I take control of her screen, and then I can actually go through and troubleshoot when she's in Wisconsin and I'm here in Michigan. So really go through and practice all of those controls and allowing other people to share, which is really, really awesome. Find a good friend, do some practice back and forth, and just trial and error. There's so many features in here that I'm learning about, even within the last 2 weeks as we've been digging more into it and more articles have been coming out. There's a lot of features out there for you to be able to use. You just got to get in there, trial and error. Jen and I did this actually probably for a good hour yesterday, just hitting all the buttons we possibly could to see what would happen when we clicked them. So all sorts of fun. All right. So next thing here before we have the call. So this is after we have sent out the invite now, but before we're actually launching the call. So this is a big one. Turn off any pop-up previews for emails and notifications. And I say this to you not because I have had this happen to me, but I've watched it painfully happen in front of me. We were doing a all-hands call about 6 to 8 years ago, and somebody was sharing their screen to run a all-hands call. So it was not the presenter, it was somebody who was using their computer to run it. And somebody started to IM them. that the presenter was basically a blowhard, and that all of this not very nice stuff through this IM. And this poor person couldn't figure out how to turn that off quick enough. And it basically got broadcasted out to the entire company at that point. So I know that we are all working on different types of equipment. So maybe you have that set up at work where you didn't have the previews on, you didn't have your notifications on, all of that type of stuff. But think about what system you are on now. So we might be working from a desktop that's in our office. We might be working on a personal laptop now. Think about what the settings are on your computer before you start to share, because it might not be the same across all of your devices. And you just want to double check before you jump on that call. Mm-hmm. The second one on here is to think about what you actually want to share. So this is thinking about, do you want to share your entire desktop, or do you want to share just an application? And this is a good one, because if you end up sharing your entire desktop, remember that anything that you do on that screen is going to be visible by the other person who's on the other end of that webinar or that call. So if you do have your entire screen shared, just be prepped and ready to go so that they can see everything. The one good thing is in Zoom and in Skype and in GoToMeeting, I checked all of these yesterday, it does give you the option to pause your share to be able to do stuff behind the scenes and then unpause it. So for those of you who do like to share your whole screen, you can actually pause it now. So if you want instructions on how to do that as well, just shoot us a message after we email you with the presentation, and we'll give you instructions on how to do that. Otherwise, I would recommend, if you're new at this, just share the application that you're going to be working on. So if it's just a Word document or just a browser page or a SharePoint site, go ahead and just share that for now, and just share that application instead of sharing the whole screen. All right, then the next tip on that one is to pull up everything you think you might want to share during the call. So this requires a little bit of forethought on your part. So you've got to go through and think, hey, what are all the things that we think we might need to review during this call? And then pull them all up on your screen, because nobody wants to watch you search for documents while you're on a call. We actually had this happen to us a couple days ago, where we were on a call with somebody and they were going through looking for a document. I think this was last week this happened. We were doing a screen share with them, and all of a sudden they're like, I need to go find this document. And immediately, as soon as they started doing that, she was going through was watching her go through multiple Windows Explorer documents, clicking in folders, and it was like, holy boy, are you just unorganized there, number one. And then two, we had to sit there and watch her search for a document for probably about 45 minutes or 45 seconds, which for me, I have the attention span of a fruit fly. And immediately during that time, because I wasn't on video, I was like, oh, let me start perusing Amazon and figure out if toilet paper was back on stock. And I had checked out at that point. So think through what you actually need to pull up so you're super prepared. You can switch back and forth between those documents and you are ready to go. And then the last one on this page is to have your phone a friend numbers handy, and make sure you know how to call them. So some of these smaller meetings, if you're only talking to one or two other people, you might just be doing a conference call on your phone where you're just merging a bunch of calls. You might not be dialing into a Zoom meeting or a GoToMeeting or using your web conferencing. You may have just dialed them directly, because a lot of the stuff that's going on today is just one person calling another person and saying, hey, we got to get this person on the phone as well. So make sure that you've got those numbers handy. A lot of us they don't necessarily have their cell phone numbers in our phone. We have their work phones in here, but we may not have their home phone or their cell phone in our phones now. So go through, try and dig that out if you think you might need to call them during the call, and then practice, this is the big thing, practice merging other people onto your call if you're doing that. I cannot tell you how many people, Jen included, I have hung up on trying to merge people into a call. Luckily, both Samsung and Apple have made that very easy now. It's pretty intuitive for you to be able to do, so that you can merge other people into your call. Been fantastic. All right. So the other tip that we have for you ahead of time as well is, if at all possible, if you can use some sort of event file workbook. So this is an example. When we are running a continuous improvement event, we don't want to be switching back and forth between a bunch of documents or having to pull up a template and then setting that template up, resaving it. we've actually had a lot of good luck with just creating a single event file workbook that has everything in that workbook that we could possibly need. So one tab would be your project charter. The next tab would be your problem statement and objective statement template. The third page would be like a current state process map template, so that you've got all of that right there and you're dealing with one file. So then that way you don't even have to worry about switching between documents. You're just switching between tabs in a workbook. And Jen, you said you did that same thing in a previous position as well?
Yes, so every single project was in one workbook, and therefore when you sent it out, shared it with people, their example, the charter, problem statement, schedule, roles, deadlines was all in one workbook. You just scroll the tabs versus opening 20 different files on your computer.
Absolutely. That worked real well. Good. And Elizabeth, I like your suggestion there, putting the hyperlink to relevant files to open. That's a great one if you're, especially if you're running like a SharePoint site that you're just pulling up links to documents. You could just have a Word document pulled up that has, here's all the hyperlinks that I need to be able to get to those documents, and you can just click them off one by one. I know for me, that would be fantastic. If I saw somebody doing that, I'd be like, that person is super organized, and I am impressed. So great suggestion there. I love that. All right. So now we've done all this work. Now we are finally to getting into the call. All of this work just to have a phone call. But think about all the prep you do for meetings. It's really no different when you're doing your virtual calls like this. So during your call, one, open that meeting room a few minutes before the call starts. And that allows people to come in, start dialing in, so that you are kind of starting ahead of time and people can get comfortable in there. And if you can, use a meeting lobby if available. So as you came in today, we kind of put you guys in a queue, and then as soon as we opened up the meeting, everybody was able to kind of jump in. That meeting lobby is really helpful as well if you want to make sure that you're letting people all in at one time, so that you don't have basically 3 minutes of John's on, Julie's on, JP's on, Dash is on, all these people who are jumping onto the meeting. We do want you to announce yourself, but that meeting lobby can really help you out with that. The second tip here, and this is one of the biggest tips that I have for you when it comes to managing engagement and participation in your meeting, is to keep an attendee list next to your phone. Now, I automatically just start making my list. So you can see in the example here, I've got Jen, JP, Holly, and Marianne. These are all people who are on a call with me. So in those cases, I'm writing down their name when they jump on the call. And then every time they add something or share, I'm just basically putting a tick mark next to their name so that I can see who might be engaged, who might not be engaged. I pick on my husband, that's JP. You can see he was not very engaged in the call. So in this case, I opened up my door and looked down at his office, gave him a stern look and told him to participate. But these are things that for you, you can start keeping attention or keep paying attention to who is actually engaged in your call. And fun trick for you, if you've got paid subscriptions in Zoom, in GoToMeeting, and in Skype, Skype, I think you have to have a certain level of subscription, but you can actually turn on features that show people who have your shared screen on as their active screen. And if they click off of it, it can turn off. I know that probably just scared a whole bunch of you. I promise I'm not watching you right now. I don't have that turned on with your attendees right now. That would be a lot for me to handle at this point. But that feature is available if you are concerned about people keeping it up on the top of their screen. That though, using that list and making sure that you're paying attention to who is participating and who is not, video is a great way to do this, but it also helps you get comfortable with knowing who you need to call on. And you're calling on people, you're not calling them out, you're calling on them to basically encourage participation. So you think about those people in meetings that maybe before you could kind of look at them and see that they had something to say. That's a lot more difficult to do now. So this is where you're going to have to kind of watch their screen if they're sharing their video. But in a lot of these cases, you're going to be able to know whether or not they're speaking on the call. That's where keeping track of who's participating and kind of looking at that chart will help me understand who I need to engage more, because it's our job as the facilitator of that call to really go through and engage people during the session. That falls on me as the facilitator. And if you're the one leading the meeting, that's falling on you too, to help make sure that people are still continuing to be engaged. All right. Now, continuing through the call, make sure that you're assigning people the roles within the call. So obviously, if you're running it, you're probably the facilitator. Do not try and be the facilitator and the note taker, especially on these visual calls, because of the fact that it is so difficult to try and manage people, watch people, and take notes. I don't even recommend this when you guys are all in person. It's better for somebody to focus on the facilitation and then have somebody else focus on the note taking. And then always assign somebody the comic relief. That's why we have Jen here. She is my comic relief at all times. That's her role. I don't assign her note taker anymore.
Do I need to put my robe on?
You do need to put your robe on. That's pretty fantastic. She is my comic relief here. I love it.
Second call today in a robe. I am dressed though now, but earlier I was in a robe. No shame.
There you go. I love it. No, Tim saw me yesterday. I was wearing a baseball cap just because my bangs were not behaving with me. So baseball cap it was. All right. And for Carrie, I don't know, Carrie, if you see out there, I am wearing my green today. I did get yelled at because I was not wearing green yesterday. So Carrie, this green today is for you. All right. So Carrie loves it. Wonderful. All right. So the second thing here is to announce yourself when you are joining. And this is especially important if you happen to jump in and join the meeting late. So typically in the beginning of the meeting, if you open up a lobby or you do roll call to make sure that people are on the call, one, let people know who else is on the call. So just say, just to confirm, I want to go back through and announce everybody who's on the call so that people know who is there. Because I can't tell you the amount of times that people would have said something somewhat mean when a person was actually on the call, but either they never announced that they were on or they jumped in after we did roll call and they didn't realize that that person was on the phone. So just do everybody a favor at the beginning of the call, do a roll call, announce everybody who's on, and then if somebody does join in, make sure that they're announcing themselves one. Typically, you as a presenter can hear a beep, like an audible beep when somebody dials into the call. And you can ask like, okay, thanks, who just joined? And then say, oh, hey, thanks for joining, John. X, Y, and Z are on the call today here as well. And just give them the courtesy of letting them know. One of the nice things actually about Zoom and GoToMeeting and Skype as well is it typically will tell you from the participant list who is on there. Put your actual name on there. Don't just let it be your phone number. Let people know, give them a heads up as to who you are. And then this one here might be a little bit controversial. It might be the most controversial part of this slide. So this is really important now that we are all working from home. We all have this patience that we have to earn and get because of the fact that we can't control our environments. There are dogs running around. There are kids running around. There are loud husbands who are running around that just make noise. I can't control when the UPS guy comes to my house and my dogs lose their mind. So what I like to say on this one is mute yourself when there is really loud noise in the background or that can be bothering to other people. You can check with the team to say, hey, is anybody bothered by what's going on in the background? If it's pretty quiet the majority of the time, you don't have to mute yourself because of the fact that in a lot of these cases, people aren't real great at taking themselves off mute. So who today has already been on a phone call where somebody said, oh, sorry, I was on mute. And they're like jumping into the conversation about 10 seconds too late. It happens quite a bit. So what I'm suggesting on this one, especially while you're home, is to just mute yourself when there is loud noise around you. Otherwise, it's good to be able to hear the audible, oh, yes, like you want to be able to take those cues that people understand and they're hearing you. I can't tell you, I used to put my phone on mute all the time, and I was still audibly answering back to them being like, oh, good idea, realizing that they absolutely could not hear me, and it would probably be really good for those people to have that feedback. The other thing with it as well, if you've done a lot of facilitation and presenting over the phone like this, if everybody has you on mute, you can tell, and it absolutely sounds like you're talking to yourself. And it can be incredibly frustrating and nerve-wracking, especially for a new facilitator, which we're going to have a ton of them now. It can feel very eerie because you can almost hear yourself, and that's about it. And then you start to question if anybody is actually listening. So give people a little bit of a break on some of the background noise. Mute yourself if there's lots of loud stuff going on, but this will absolutely help you to make sure that people stay engaged. And especially for those people who don't know, like you see them doing this because they don't know how to take themselves off mute, Or if you're like me, I used to do that and then I would hang up on the call accidentally and then dial in a minute later. I've done that multiple times. It can help prevent that. And you want to make sure that people are expressing their opinions and their views right in real time with that conversation instead of chiming in 10 seconds late. Even that short amount of time is enough time for people to move on to the next topic. So while it may be controversial, I think it's probably a good one for right now. Interestingly enough, if you happen to be a Zoom user, I did learn yesterday there were some tips and tricks I was reading when we were preparing for this call. If you have yourself on audio and you've got yourself on mute, if you press the space bar down, it temporarily takes you off mute. So then you don't have to worry about unmuting from your phone or unmuting from your computer and having to click a button. It basically, with space bar down, you can do your talking and then unspace bar. So I haven't looked into that with GoToMeetings yet, but I will definitely look into that to see if Skype does that in GoToMeetings. And if you've got questions on that, let us know. All right. Then, these are the other things during the call while you're running it. Remember to take a breath. And we've had this situation, it's not as bad anymore as it used to be, unless you've got some people with some old cell phones or you've got some old Polycoms out there. And who knows, really, I haven't really done a lot on this with computer microphones. But if you're not taking a breath, you're not allowing people to jump in and say something. So we were running a meeting, oh gosh, this is probably 15 years ago now, where somebody just kept going and going and going and going. And he'd be like, all right, anybody have any questions? Okay, no, I'll just keep moving on to the next topic. And we all had questions. And we kept like yelling at the phone, like looking at it and yelling at the Polycom because he wouldn't stop. So we started to take to the point where we just started bashing numbers on the phone, like hitting the keypads on the phone to try and make an audible noise so that that person maybe would hear that and stop and say, oh, what was that? It got so bad that we ended up having to call somebody's cell phone that was on that call and be like, hey, can you tell Scott to just stop for a minute and allow us to get a word in edgewise here? So do remember to take a breath. You'll see me, my trick is my water bottle here. So you'll see me when I am on calls with other people and they need to be able to talk. I'll say what I have to say. I'll stop, take a sip, allow them to be able to speak and say something. So it will definitely help with that flow and the conversation. And then my best guess for you guys is as you are running these meetings, it's very similar to how you were running in-person meetings. In person, you might be able to run a slight bit longer, about that 65 to 70 minute mark, but try and take short breaks every 50 to 55 minutes. So try and take a 5 to 10 minute break every 50 to 55 minutes. And a big tip on this one, don't jump off the call. Like, don't close out the meeting, don't dial or don't hang up your phone if you don't have to, unless you have to like check your voicemail or make a call quick, because otherwise you add time back on when people need to dial back into the meeting, because then you have to go through the whole process again of getting everybody dialed back in, get everything shared, and having people call back in, and it's kind of a mess. So if you can, just throw something up on your screen and say, we're going to take a break, we're going to be back at 3:15, and then we want you to dial back in. So, all right. So this is just fun. We're going to try the poll one more time and see if this happens. I don't have high hopes here, but let's see. All right. So we are going to go to the next poll here. Number 2. Maybe this will work. Maybe it won't.
Oh, it's on.
It's
working.
on?
Yeah.
Look at that. Okay. So who has bingos? When was the last time you actually had bingo? I cracked up looking at this card. One of my friends shared this a couple days ago, and it is so painfully hilarious because it is so awesome. A conference called Bingo. So I know for me, I did not have it happen yet today, but I did have it happen yesterday on a call, which was amazing. Some of my favorite ones on here. Can everyone go on mute? I'm sorry, I was on mute. I think there's a lag. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? Those are all my favorite ones. Oh, I like that last one. We've had 32% of our people who said not yet, I should go buy a lotto ticket. So that is amazing. I really like that. For those of you, if you're playing this towards the later end of the day, if it's 5, 6 o'clock and you're still on a call, there is no shame in turning this into drinking bingo. I am totally fine with that. So go ahead if that is allowed. Maybe you might not be working anymore, or maybe just save those for the end of the day, and that's how many shots you take when you get off work. All right, so I'm going to end those polls. You can see what we've had here. So our polls here, look at that. Already today, so poor 20% of you have already had it happen today, 25% in the last day, 25% in the last week, and 30% have not had it happen yet. So you should go buy a lotto ticket. Absolutely, you should. That is impressive. All right, so now we are after the call. These are big things here. Close your dial-in. Make sure you hang up the call right away after the call so that you don't start talking and say something that you don't want to say, that you don't want other people to hear. And that also goes along with stop sharing your screen as soon as you're done with that call as well. So Jen, you want to share a story on that one with us?
Yeah, so once a coworker was in a meeting, sharing her screen, leading it, and just like Julie said, she had her entire, desktop being shared. The meeting ended, they hung up, and she continued to share her screen. And this was back, I don't know, some late, like 2007, 8, 9, somewhere. And it was when honey badgers were very popular. She was looking up honey badger videos for about 40 minutes. And finally, an executive vice president walked over to her desk and asked what she was doing while she was continuing to search for honey badgers. Now, why was he still watching her screen is another question, but still, don't embarrass yourself. Close up everything, start something new, triple press it. So just watch out.
Absolutely. It is fantastic. I love that example. And I've seen that happen way too often. So close your dial-in, stop sharing your screen. And then as with any other meeting that you're in, make sure that you get those notes and action items out to the team ASAP. This is much easier if you've got a note taker in the meeting. If it is a particularly long meeting and it's critical for us to get that stuff out right away, I will schedule another 15 to 30 minutes with the note taker after the meeting, or I'll make sure that I've got some sort of buffer in there to close my notes out and get those sent before I move on to the next topic. So that's a good key point for you guys as well. If you do have a note taker assigned and it is crucial to get those out, schedule 15 minutes, half an hour, put an hour block on your calendar after that call to make sure you get yourselves organized, you get the notes out to those people who need them, because they might be depending on it for them to be able to move on to their next topics. All right. Then, best practices for you guys. One, embrace the videos. You can see John and I both here on video. We've got some of our former coworkers on here. We had one coworker who lived out in San Diego. Hi, Holly, if you're on. We would all be sitting in our Brighton office. Actually, we'd all be sitting in my office around our table, but we would still all jump on the video conference call so that Holly could see our faces. It was a little Brady Bunch-esque. I know, Carrie, you asked how many people you can get on there. With Zoom, you can actually do up to 100 people on the screen. That would be really tiny little people. But it's pretty successful. You can, like, the block of, I think, like 5 across by 4 down. So doing that 20 people actually works pretty well. So you can absolutely do this with a bunch of people on the screen. It's just going to make their pixel size a little bit smaller, but at least you can see their smiley faces in those cases. So please embrace the video. Don't worry about what you look like. Actually, Zoom has a wonderful feature on it that it has a filter that makes my skin look like an Instagram filter, and I look a lot better than I normally do in real life. So there's filters like that on the majority of the meeting softwares that you can turn that filter on. So highly suggest and recommend that. The other tips we have for you as well is, this is all a new normal for us, but still get yourself ready for the day. So you may not put on as much makeup, you may not do your hair as nice as yesterday while I had my baseball cap on, but still get up in the morning, get yourself ready like you are going to a normal day of work, and keep a routine as best you can. Now, that routine might not be the same as what you had when you were going to work. It's a little bit different now, but just put together some sort of routine so you have a new normal in those cases. That will definitely help you out. And then if you can, set up that dedicated work zone that is your spot. Now, it might have to move around every once in a while, but even if you're like Jen and you've commandeered your laundry room to set up, this is where I'm going to be working from, it's a dedicated workspace for you guys to be able to ensure that you're getting your work done. And then a big tip here too, if you do have 2 screens, I've got 2 screens here, so if you see me looking back and forth, that's why. Have the 2 monitors if at all possible, but if you don't have 2 monitors at home, you can absolutely just get creative. So Zoom actually has an application, so does WebEx. You can do it right on your phone. Skype has it as well. You could pull it up on your tablet, your iPad. You could pull it up on a secondary computer that you could actually have two screens going. So you could be looking at documents in one screen, and you could have the Zoom meeting going in another screen. Or in this case, I've got the web presentation going on one side, and I typically put people's videos on the other side so that I can see the content, but I can still engage with people and kind of see their reactions and how they are embracing the work that I'm doing, if they're participating and if they're engaged. So think about getting creative on that if you don't have the opportunity to have two monitors at home. And then the other things we have for you are best practices. For those leading teams remotely, reach out to your team daily. If you can, do a stand-up call with them, throw them all on video like this. Maybe not do it at like 8 o'clock in the morning where they haven't gotten ready yet. Maybe do it at 9, give them a little bit of time, but do a stand-up call with your team. If you can do it via video, awesome. And then make sure that you're reaching out to your team at least daily. So if you've got team members, reach out to them one-on-one. This is not your stand-up. This is not with everybody. This is one-on-one with people. So make sure you're touching base with them. Make sure that they're doing okay, because a lot of people can feel really isolated. I saw one of our friends posted last night, introverts, go check on your extrovert friends because they're not okay. I'm an introvert, Jen's an extrovert. She checks in on me to make sure that I'm okay. I'm good back and forth in this environment, but I'm like, I've trained for this my whole life. Like, I got this. I don't know how Jen's doing it. She's one of those people who just works her way through crowds and is best friends with everybody. Yeah, exactly. Alcohol, yes. You've been playing bingo again too. So make sure that you're checking in with people to make sure that they're okay. If you aren't already, utilize some sort of instant messaging or Slack type channel, Yammer, all of that stuff that's out there, Slack, Skype, MS Teams, other chat software. Please use that. Pick up the phone, IM with people. Don't just shut down and stay home and not think that you've got to not talk to people. Talking to people is fine. Just stay 6 feet away from them. You're good. And then when you actually can gather again, get together and gather up in those small groups. If you are running these types of virtual meetings and you do have the opportunity, hopefully in maybe a month or 2 months, maybe here, put small groups of people together. So we used to do this quite a bit when we had a big contingent of people in the Detroit office, in our Green Bay office, and like in our Columbus office. We would have one main person running the meeting in each of those locations, and we would just bring all the participants into those conference rooms. So instead of having 15 people sitting at their own computers, we had clusters of 5 people sitting in different locations. You didn't have to travel, but you were still able to pull people together and have that camaraderie. So when we can have small groups again, go ahead and do that. And then our last page of best practices here. If you do have kids, that you close the door if you can. You don't have to, but you can close the door. Jen said lock the door yesterday. I was like, I don't know that you really want to lock your kids out.
It's locked.
Or your kids locked it.
One was knocking, like, Mommy, Mommy. I was expecting a note under the door, but they can't spell yet, so.
I love it. I love it. If they do happen to be old enough, put like a sign on the door. I was telling my husband about this yesterday, and he's like, is that like the sock on the door you would put on in college? And I was like, oh gosh, dear, no. Put a sign on the door like, Mom's on a call, Dad's on a call. They can't come in until you're done, something like that. Maybe they'll abide by it. Maybe they won't. Who knows? Fine. We're all going to be patient with it. If you can, plan an activity for them. Obviously easier said than done. I don't have children. Jen said this might work. So coloring, having some sort of activity for them to do that might buy you some time. Or for those of you with dogs, you can bribe them with chews, kongs, all that type of stuff. For me, I have to close the blinds because otherwise they bark at every single squirrel that moves outside or every leaf that moved, and make sure that you're exercising them and you. It gives you an opportunity to go out there. So I do have to share with you, so hold on just a second here, just for you guys for sticking on. This little guy here has been in the room the entire time. So Dash, can you say hi to everyone? Say hi, Dash. I know I just woke him up from his nap. So he's been properly exercised today. So he has been sleeping over in the corner, and he's been a very good boy and being super quiet. But when we talked about what your biggest fears were on calls, this is one of my biggest fears, because when he sees a leaf move outside, he is the one who is going to bark at all of them in those cases and alert me to the fact that the leaf moved. So we all just need to be super patient with each other, knowing that this stuff is going to happen. Kids are going to scream, dogs are going to bark, husbands are going to be loud. It's just the way that it is right now. So just be super patient about it. Try and coordinate with your roommate or your partner, or whatever it is that you have at home. If you've got somebody who might be jumping in, it's all about coordination. So my husband and I talk every morning. He works from home. So we both work from home predominantly anyways. And we try and coordinate our calendar in the morning to say, okay, who needs to take the dogs when do you need them to be super, super quiet? And we're really good at pairing that back off and forth. All right. So this is what you guys are going to see. You're going to get a copy of this entire checklist so you can go through it. And then we do have upcoming webinars. So our next one is in April 23rd. Jen's going to be leading one on why lean isn't just only for a production line. So how do you use lean in the office and in the service industry? She's going to be teaching some basic concepts of lean. And then I'm going to be doing one on May 20th, which is about lessons learned. So obviously we've got some big things, big changes. Hopefully by May, we will be able to do some lessons learned from that, because we'll be coming out the other side there, and why documenting your lessons learned is so important in situations like this so we can be better prepared for next time. All right, so with that, we do have a couple questions that are out there. You feel free to use the Q&A platform if you do have questions for us. So people learning how to use Skype, go to meetings, user-friendly, awesome. People are very excited about the next webinar. Jen, looks like you've been answering questions already. Look at that. This is why you have a partner. Look at that. You have a partner in Jen. Yes, this is why I can help. And also tip, when you have a facilitator, if you want two of you so you can have somebody managing your Q&A and managing all that stuff while one person speaks, this is why that works. So two is always better than one in this case. All right. Any other? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and something that we can send as a follow-up was what we found: Zoom versus FaceTime versus GoToMeeting versus WebEx versus some are, you don't even know they're different, but they're different platforms, and some you can customize to your company. But there's definitely some advantages to some software.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll go whatever software has that lovely face filter on, so it makes me look prettier than I actually am. I'll take it. I will take it. All right. Well, shortly after the call today, you guys are going to get an email from Jen and I that has the copy of the presentation here today, as well as a copy of that checklist. Feel free to share it with anybody. If you guys do have questions, please reach out to us. We love this stuff. We wanted to find a way to give back and share with people who might be struggling with this now and just want some extra tips to be able to share. We are here to help you. Contact us. We love talking about this stuff. So thank you all for joining. I really appreciate it. Stay safe out there. Thanks, everyone. Bye, Jen.
I'm not muted. I can talk.
There you go. See you all later. Bye.